It was a special day for the commune. They had decided to open up a little more about themselves to the outside world and welcome a visit from a journalist. An 11-year-old girl, who was among the trained children, was given a list of prepped questions of what to say and what not to say in front of the guest. She was excited to meet the man. Little did she know, the meeting that day changed her life forever. To her surprise, he didn't ask any of the questions she was prepared for, just a simple, almost trivial one. What do you want to be when you grow up? This question was a wake-up call for her by introducing a whole new concept of growing up and hinting of a life outside of the cult. 4 years later, she escaped the cult, leaving her parents and siblings, built a new life, and slowly started the process of confronting her past. That's the story of Bexy Cameron, which I came across in an article from The Guardian. The story sparks a question in my mind. What it's like to be in a cult? Hi, Seth here. Welcome back. This is the third episode of the On Cult series. In the first 2 episodes, we looked at a short history of cults and some of the reasons why people might join cults. In today's episode, I'd like to delve into the experience of cult members, what actually happens in a cult, what's going on in their mind, the feelings and rationale during that time. The main source of the video is qualitative research by Simone Gil Mallet, which features many fascinating quotes from ex-members of various Bible-based cults, so our understanding will be limited to this particular type of cult, but it should be enough to provide a general understanding of what it's like to be part of a cult. Let's dive in. First, let's take a look at the key symbol in many Bible-based cults, the eye. What is this eye? A watchful eye from an all-powerful, all-knowing deity. Yeah, I know you're thinking it. It's him, God. A central theme of these Bible-based cults is God is an audience in the group. God is the witness, judge, and jury to every action of the followers, creating a pressure to act according to God's will. And how do we know what God's will is? We'll soon find out in the later parts of the episode. Now let's talk about the image of the cult as a whole. A very common characteristic of these groups is their belief that they are God's chosen elite and the only true means to salvation. Looking further into the psychology behind this thinking, an interesting theme emerges. An us and them mentality, characterized by black and white thinking. We, us, good, they, them, bad. This creates a superiority complex where they view outsiders as leading lesser lives. We are the chosen ones, we know the truth, so we are better than everyone else. This mentality leads them to embark on a messianic mission to convert people in order to save them. These elites are led by the chosen one, the brightest of them all, the cult leader. The leader has divine authority within the group, which means he speaks God's words and he is the true messenger of God's will. Ultimately, his divine status and demand for obedience cannot be questioned. Now we know about the members and the leader. What's in between? The demand for conformity. The members are influenced or controlled over almost every aspect of their lives. The other thing that is important is that we could not escape from the church doctrine, and there was constant incentives and constant pressure to conform. There really was. Every time I mentioned my desire to do something else, there were expressions of great sadness about the idea. Now we're at the center of how life can be in a cult. The influence of a cult on its members can be organized into 4 categories: relationship with outside world, members' everyday life, relationship within the group, and belief interpretation. Let's look at the relationship with outside world. It's all about isolation. Members were discouraged from engaging in social connections to the outside world, especially people they know from their former life, even family. Family visits are allowed if they wish to, but there's an underlying pressure suggesting them not to do so. They will be guilt-tripped into thinking they were selfish and ignoring God's priority. On top of that, they're told that they are entering a new spiritual plane, which can be jeopardized by looking back at past ties and values. To further enhance this isolation, access to information is highly restricted, including incoming and outgoing correspondence, telephone calls, radio or television use, and unauthorized reading matters. In fact, it was a sin to watch the 6 o'clock news. Why is it sin? It's because at 6 o'clock, you're sitting down watching the news and the Lord's world out there. You are being ungodly because if you are really sacrificial, you deny yourself the love of the news. And it is sin because it opens your eyes on a lot of critics to us. So you don't love God if you watch the news. The way I see it now is that any information was monitored, which was effective, very, very effective, in disconnecting us from our normal frame of reference that would normally have allowed us to look at the experience more critically. The debate between free will and determinism becomes insignificant for the members when looking at their daily activities. Controlled by a tight schedule, even basic life decisions are arranged for them by the group, gradually lessening the sense of personal identity. Everything is for the group. Individual needs are always secondary. And I think this is very typical of cults, that they will bombard you with so much that you don't have time to take stock. You fill up every single moment, take over all of your time. There was so much rush and so much pressure and so much business, I didn't have time hardly to think, to sleep even, or let alone pray and to find out really what God's will for our life was. Influence over language is another common theme reported among cult members. A specific set of expressions is often used in the group, creating a sense of elitism. The same expressions that people use, very odd. I suppose it was a way of expressing and keeping us separate. The them and us thing loaded language all the time, calling each other brother, You read about it. International Church of Christ use very similar loaded language. The next major aspect of inner control in cults is over parenting and marital. Parenting is heavily influenced by the cult doctrines to an extent that parents don't have the highest authority over their children's welfare. Members during their time in the cults often viewed it as carrying God's will, although some do have inner conflicts about it. And it was difficult denying, because you had to deny the normal things that children would enjoy. But it was always difficult, because there were things in your heart you wanted to show love and affection and do normal things with your family. And my children do normal things with their grandparents. Sexual and marital relationships are also heavily influenced by the cults. This ranges from arranged marriage.
이상 가정을 이룰 것을 약속하느냐? 네!
To prohibition of sexual interaction. And of course, we were constantly reminded that Satan was trying to destroy our faith and our spiritual life by giving us sexual thoughts. The sex is the original and greatest sin. I was just a young male with a healthy sexual appetite, and here I was believing and consciously thinking that to think about sex was evil. In some cases, the opposite of prohibition was encouraged, promiscuity. And you understand this if you see the materials we have to read every day and the more letters. Amber wrote countless more letters on the subject. He used like, God doesn't see sex as dirty. The man will feel the love of God and the woman unselfishly when she gives them sex. Now we look at the last category, belief and interpretation of God's will. Group ideologies are internalized as the absolute truth, and any kind of incoming information is interpreted in a way that fits it within this belief system. Scriptures are often taken out of context to back up leadership decision or group's rationale. So, back to the question earlier, how do we know what God's will is? We don't, only the cult leaders know. God is viewed as an audience within the group, and the leader is considered divine. So his decision and group beliefs cannot be questioned. Anything you might question can be considered an act of defying the Bible, the leader, and God. We were told things like the Bible had prophesied that the Messiah had now arrived from the east, as the lightning comes out of the east and shines to the west, and he had paid indemnity for us and was now here to fulfill God's mission, which of course God had wanted to accomplish all along, but had been prevented from doing so by the failure of people to fulfill their responsibility. I mean, it doesn't sound so strange if you understand we had a certain way of thinking about things and seeing the world, and we interpreted everything in these terms. A pop culture reference I can link to this is the character Bexy Cameron from the TV show Midnight Mass, where she always twists lies from the Bible out of context to justify every of her actions, however horrifying they are. And this is her ending. Cult experience is a weird show of psychology coercion, which cannot be fully comprehended by looking at just one facet of it. Will people ever break free from it? Yeah, some do. In fact, many did. We'll find out about it in the next episode. This is also the end of the video. Thank you for joining me on today's episode. See you in the next video. Cheers.